The great ships hung in the sky like metal mountains. They blocked the sun over every major city on Earth. People stood in the streets and looked up with hope in their hearts. For 30 years, humanity had dreamed of meeting other life in the universe. Now that dream had come true. Admiral Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, the Unity, and watched the alien fleet surround Earth. His fleet was small, only 50 ships. The aliens had brought thousands. He had spent his whole life preparing for this moment. He had imagined handshakes and treaties and the sharing of knowledge. He had never imagined this. "They are not responding to our messages," said his communications officer. Daeho kept his face calm. Inside, his stomach twisted with fear. "Keep trying." On Earth, Dr. Yuna Park stood outside the United Nations building with other scientists. She had spent 40 years studying the stars, searching for signs of life. She had written books about how first contact would change everything. She had been right about that. But she had been wrong about how the alien broadcast came at noon. Every screen on Earth showed the same image. A creature that looked like a tall insect with too many eyes spoke in a voice that had no emotion. "The Galactic Council of 12 has reviewed your species. You have been classified as a resource world. Your population will be distributed for labor purposes. Resistance will result in extinction. This decision is final." The world went silent. Then it went mad. General Haeon-beek was 73 years old. He had fought in 3 wars. He had warned the governments of Earth that the universe might not be friendly. They had called him paranoid. They had cut his military funding. Now, he watched his worst nightmare come true. "How long do we have?" asked the president. Haeon looked at the tactical display. The alien ships were moving into position around the planet. "Hours, maybe less. Can we fight?" Haeon wanted to lie. He wanted to give hope. But he was a soldier, and soldiers told the truth. No, their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. Our weapons would be like throwing rocks at tanks. Admiral Daeho made his choice. He would not let humanity die without fighting. He ordered his fleet forward. 50 ships against thousands. It was suicide. He knew it. His crew knew it. They flew anyway. The battle lasted 11 minutes. The alien weapons were beyond anything humans had seen. They did not use missiles or bullets. They used gravity itself. Daeho watched his ships crumple like paper. He watched his friends die in the vacuum of space. When his own ship was hit, he felt the hull twist around him. He survived. They let him survive. They wanted witnesses. The invasion took 3 days. Alien soldiers marched through every city on Earth. They did not look the same. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had no faces at all. 12 different species, all working together, all united in one purpose. Dr. Yuna was captured in Seoul. They put metal collars around the necks of everyone in her group. The collar burned when she moved too fast or spoke too loud. She learned quickly to be silent and slow. She watched as families were separated. Children screamed for their parents. Parents begged on their knees. The aliens did not care. They sorted humans like products in a factory. Strong ones went to one group. Weak ones went to another. Old ones and sick ones were taken somewhere else. Yuna never saw those people again. General Haeon refused to surrender. He gathered what soldiers he could and fled to the mountains. For 3 weeks they fought. They killed aliens when they could. It did not matter. The aliens had machines that could see through rock. They had weapons that could melt mountains. Haeon was captured alive. They made an example of him. They broadcast his torture to the whole planet. They wanted humans to understand that resistance was pointless. Daeho was forced to watch from a prison ship. He memorized every scream. He burned every image into his brain. He swore an oath that day. Someday, somehow, humanity would make them pay. The distribution began 1 month after the invasion. Humans were loaded onto transport ships like animals. Each ship held 10,000 people. The ships flew to different worlds across the galaxy. Families that had been together for generations were scattered. Across light years, Yuna was sent to a mining colony on a frozen moon. The temperature was so cold that water turned to ice in seconds. Humans worked in thin suits that barely kept them alive. Many died in the first week. The aliens did not care. More humans arrived every day. She learned the names of the species that owned her. The Vorin, they were the ones who had proposed Earth's enslavement. Their representative had given a speech to the council about how humans were perfect for labor, strong enough to work, smart enough to follow orders, weak enough to control. The council had voted. All 12 species raised their agreement. Not one voice spoke for humanity. Not one species said that slavery was wrong. They had all agreed that humans were less than people. They had all agreed that Earth was nothing but a resource to be used. On Earth, the oceans were drained for fuel. The forests were cut for materials. The mountains were hollowed for minerals. Within 10 years, the blue planet that humans had loved was a gray and empty rock, but something survived. Something the aliens did not expect. In the mines and the factories and the farms across the galaxy, humans whispered to each other. They shared stories of Earth. They shared memories of freedom. They shared something that the aliens had never experienced. Hatred. Pure and patient and eternal. Admiral Deho worked in a shipyard. His body was broken, but his mind was sharp. He watched the alien engineers. He learned their language. He studied their ships. He waited. Dr. Yuna treated sick workers in the mines. She learned the biology of every alien species she saw. She noted their weaknesses. She remembered everything. She waited. General Hain was dead. But before he died, he had taught young humans how to fight, how to hide, how to plan. His students taught others. The knowledge spread like fire through dry grass. The aliens thought they had one. They thought humans would accept their chains like every other species before them. They did not understand what they had created. They had united humanity in a way that nothing else ever could. They had given 12 billion people a single purpose. They had forged the most dangerous weapon in the universe. A species with nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. The first year of slavery ended. Then the second. Then the 10th. Humans kept their heads down. They worked hard. They died quietly, and they planned. 50 years passed. 2 generations of humans were born in chains. They never saw Earth. They never knew freedom. But they knew the stories. Every human child learned the stories before they could walk. Jihun Esio was born on a mining asteroid far from any sun. His mother died when he was 6. The overseers worked her until her heart stopped. Jihun held her hand as she passed. She whispered one word to him. Remember, he remembered. Jihun grew up smart. Too smart to waste in the mines, the aliens decided. They sent him to work in their communication centers. He fixed their machines. He maintained their networks. He learned how information moved across the galaxy, and he began to build something in secret. The aliens used 1,000 different languages. Humans had been scattered too far to communicate. That was by design. The council knew that unity was dangerous. So they made sure humans could never unite. Jihun created a new language. He hid it in work songs. Simple melodies that humans sang in the mines and factories. The aliens heard only noise. They did not know that every note carried meaning. Every rhythm held a message. He called it the long memory. Within 10 years, humans across 1,000 worlds could speak to each other. The aliens never suspected. Commander Mingi Han learned to kill when she was 12. The Vesser Collective used human children as soldiers. They were easy to train and easy to replace. Mingi was sent to fight in wars she did not understand against enemies she had never seen. She was good at it. Too good, the Vesser promoted her. They gave her better weapons and harder missions. They thought she was loyal. They did not see the cold fire behind her eyes. Mingi studied every species she fought. She learned how they moved, how they thought. Where their bodies were weak, she memorized everything. She taught other human soldiers in whispers during the night. The Vorin cannot see in low light, she would say. The Vesser are slow to turn left. The Malthine panic when they lose their leaders. Her students spread across the galaxy. They joined other units. They taught others. A web of knowledge grew in silence. Engineer Woojin Choi worked in the greatest shipyard in the galaxy. The Malthian Empire built their warships there. Woojin was just a maintenance worker. He cleaned the engines. He checked the wiring. Nobody important, but Woojin was patient. For 30 years, he learned every system on every ship. He found flaws that even the alien engineers had missed. Small flaws. Tiny weaknesses. Things that would not matter today or tomorrow, but in 50 years. In 50 years, those flaws would tear the ships apart. Woojin trained others. He showed them how to make mistakes that looked like accidents. How to weaken a weld just enough. How to program a delay into a navigation system. Nothing obvious. Nothing that would be noticed. The sabotage spread through the fleet like a slow poison. Thousands of ships carried tiny defects that would activate decades later. The aliens inspected their vessels and found nothing wrong. They trusted their machines. They should not have. Dr. Una Park was old now. Her hair was white and her hands shook. But her mind was still sharp. She had spent 40 years as a medical worker, treating sick humans across a dozen worlds. She had also spent 40 years studying aliens. She knew their bodies better than they knew themselves. She knew which chemicals would kill them. She knew which diseases they feared. She knew the genetic codes of every council species. She could not write this knowledge down. The aliens searched everything. So she found another way. When humans died, Una prepared their bodies. She carved tiny patterns into their bones. Microscopic symbols that held all her research. The dead were burned or buried. But sometimes human workers would steal the bones. They would pass them from world to world. The most important library in the galaxy was hidden in the skeletons of the dead. The resistance had no single leader. That was its strength. If one cell was discovered, the others survived. Humans on one world might know nothing about humans on another, but they all worked toward the same goal. They called themselves the Waiting. Daeho Kim was still alive. The aliens kept him that way as a symbol. The admiral who had dared to fight. The fool who had thought he could win. They displayed him at ceremonies. They made him watch as human slaves were punished. They did not know that Daeho was the heart of the Waiting. His prison ship traveled across the galaxy. Everywhere it went, Daeho found ways to send messages. A tap on a wall. A pattern of coughs. A sequence of blinks. He connected cells that did not know each other existed. He was 115 years old. Medical technology kept him alive. He had lived long past his natural span. Every morning, he woke in pain. Every night, he dreamed of fire. He had made a promise 50 years ago. He intended to keep it. The 50th year of slavery arrived. The aliens celebrated. They called it the anniversary of acquisition. They gave human workers extra food and shorter hours. They thought this would make humans grateful. In the depths of Earth, something stirred. The planet was hollow now. The aliens had taken everything of value from the surface, but they had not dug deep enough. In the planet's core, where the heat was too great for alien machines, humans had been working. They had built a fleet, stolen materials, hidden engineers, decades of secret labor. The ships were ugly and rough. They were not as advanced as alien vessels, but they were armed with something special. Weapons designed by Dr. Una Park. Weapons that targeted specific species. Weapons that would leave humans untouched while killing everything else. The waiting was almost over across the galaxy. Humans received the signal. A simple song played on 1,000 worlds. The same melody Ji-hoon had created 40 years ago. But this time, the words were different. The time has come. Remember Earth? Remember our dead? Remember everything they did to us and make them pay. Min Ji-han gathered her soldiers. Woojin Choi activated his sabotage programs. Una Park distributed the genetic weapons she had spent a lifetime creating. Daeho Kim sent his final orders. The aliens noticed nothing. They saw only slaves doing their work. They heard only songs that meant nothing to them. They felt safe in their power. They had no idea that the most dangerous moment in galactic history was about to begin. The 50th year of slavery ended. The 51st year began with fire. The uprising did not begin with explosions or battle cries. It began with silence. On 8,000 worlds, at the exact same moment, every human stopped working. They put down their tools. They stepped back from their machines. They stood still and quiet. The aliens did not understand. Overseers shouted orders. Guards raised weapons. But the humans did not move. They only waited. Then the lights went out. Wujin Choi had spent 30 years planting seeds of destruction. Now those seeds bloomed. Across the galaxy, fusion reactors overloaded. Power grids collapsed. Ships lost navigation. Defense systems shut down. Communication networks went dark. The great civilization of the Galactic Council went blind and deaf in a single heartbeat. Captain Tai Wukong had never known freedom. He was born on a transport ship between slave worlds. He had worked in the Malthine shipyards since he could walk. He had trained in secret for 20 years. Now he stood on the bridge of a stolen cruiser and gave his first order as a free man. All ships begin the attack. The human fleet emerged from hiding places across the galaxy. They were not pretty ships. They were built from scraps and stolen parts. But they carried weapons that the aliens had never seen. Weapons built on human hatred and alien science. The Malthine defense fleet tried to respond, but their systems were failing. Engines would not start. Weapons would not fire. Navigation computers showed only errors. The tiny flaws that Wujin had planted decades ago were now tearing the ships. Apart from the inside, human vessels moved through the chaos like wolves among sheep on the frozen moon where she had been. Enslaved for 50 years, Dr. Unipark walked through the alien command center. The guards were dead. Her genetic weapon had killed them in seconds. They had coughed blood and fallen and died while she watched with empty eyes. She felt nothing. She had felt nothing for a long time. Young humans gathered around her. They looked at her like she was a god. She was the one who had given them the power to kill their masters. She was the one who had turned biology into a weapon. What do we do now? Asked a young woman. Yuna looked at the stars through the window. Earth was out there somewhere, a dead world waiting to be reborn. Go home. She said Sergeant Bora Lee led the ground assault on Nesser Prime. She had fought for the Nesser since childhood. She knew their tactics. She knew their weaknesses. She knew exactly how to break them. Her soldiers moved through the streets of the alien capital. They wore stolen armor and carried stolen weapons. The Thesser tried to fight back. But Bora had trained her people well. Every human knew where to aim. Every human knew how to kill. The Thesser had created human soldiers as tools of war. Now those tools were turned against their makers. The battle for Thesser Prime lasted 3 days. When it ended, not a single Thesser remained alive on the planet. Bora stood in the ruins of their parliament building and looked at the alien bodies around her. She remembered every human. The Thesser had worked to death. Every child they had sent to die in their wars. Every family they had torn apart. She remembered it all. This is not enough, she whispered. It will never be enough. The liberation of Earth began on the 4th day. Admiral Daeho Kim was 127 years old. His body was more machine than flesh now. Tubes and wires kept his heart beating. Metal bones held his skeleton together. But his mind was clear, and his hatred was pure. He stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, ship built in secret inside a hollowed asteroid. It was the largest vessel humans had ever created. Its weapons were designed by Dr. Una Park herself. It was made for one purpose: to kill the aliens who had stolen humanity's home. The alien occupation fleet around Earth tried to run. Their engines failed. Their weapons malfunctioned. They were helpless. Daeho gave the order: destroy them all. The sky above Earth burned with dying ships. Alien escape pods were shot down before they could reach the surface. No mercy was given, because no mercy had been received. On the ground, human resistance fighters emerged from hiding. They had been waiting for this day since the invasion. Grandchildren of the original slaves, born in secret caves and underground bunkers, They fell upon the remaining aliens with weapons made from scraps and rage. Scientist Yunji No watched the liberation from orbit. She was young, only 32 years old. She had been born free on a hidden asteroid base. She had never worn a collar, but she carried the memories of her ancestors in her heart. She had created something terrible, a weapon called the Genesis Plague. It was not like the targeted bioweapons that Dr. Yuna had designed. It was worse. It could be modified to attack any species whose genetic code was known, and humanity knew every genetic code of every council species. "Are we really going to use this?" asked her assistant. Yunji looked at the data on her screen. 12 species. Trillions of lives. If she released the Genesis Plague, none of them would survive. "They voted to enslave us," she said. "All of them." Not one said no. The children, the ones who weren't born yet when the vote happened. Yanji closed her eyes. She thought about the human children who had died in alien mines. The babies taken from their mothers. The families that would never be whole again. "Did they spare our children?" she asked. Her assistant had no answer. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. For the first time in 1,000 years, they were afraid. The species they had dismissed as useful animals were now burning their worlds. The slaves they had thought were broken were now free and furious. They sent a message to humanity. They offered peace. They offered to return Earth to human control. They offered to pay compensation for the years of slavery. Admiral Deho received the message. He read it carefully. Then he deleted it. "They had 50 years to show mercy," he said. "They showed none. Now neither will we." The human fleet began to move. 8,000 ships. 20 million soldiers. Weapons that could kill worlds. The galaxy had made humanity into monsters. Now, the monsters were coming for revenge. The Voran homeworld was the first to die. They had been the ones who proposed humanity's enslavement. Their representative had stood before the Galactic Council and called humans perfect livestock. Strong bodies. Simple minds. Easy to control. Supreme Commander Hannah Yoon stood on the bridge of her flagship and looked at the Voran world. It was beautiful. Blue oceans. Green forests. Cities that sparkled like jewels. The Voran had built their civilization over millions of years. They were proud of their culture, their art, their science. Hannah felt nothing when she gave the order. The gravitational weapons fired. The same technology the Voran had used to crush human ships during the invasion. The same weapons they had used to murder Admiral Deho's friends. Now those weapons were aimed at the planet itself. The oceans rose into the sky. The continents cracked and split. The cities crumbled into dust. The Voran screamed as their world tore itself apart. Billions of voices cried out in terror and pain. Then there was silence. Hannah watched until it was over. Until the beautiful blue world was nothing but spinning rocks and gas. Until every Voran was dead. "One down," she said. 11 to go. The Vesser Collective died next. They had purchased the most human slaves. They had used human children as soldiers. They had worked humans to death in their factories and mines and farms. Admiral Siajin Im led the fleet that destroyed them. He was young, only 28 years old. He had grown up hearing stories of Vetser cruelty. He had seen the scars on the bodies of freed slaves. He knew what the Vesser deserved, but as he watched their worlds burn, he felt something unexpected. Doubt. "There are children down there," said his tactical officer. "Young ones who never hurt anyone." Siagan did not answer. He watched the screens as the Genesis Plague spread through the Vesser population. It was fast. It was painless. That was more mercy than the Vesser had ever shown. Within 1 week, the Vesser Collective was extinct. Commander Minji Han asked for the Malthine Empire. She had a personal debt to pay. Malthine soldiers had been famous for their cruelty. They had enjoyed hurting human prisoners. They had invented new ways to cause pain. Minji had survived their camps. She had the scars to prove it. Now she brought her fleet to their home systems and showed them what she had learned. She did not use the Genesis Plague. That would have been too quick. Instead, she invaded. Planet by planet, city by city. She wanted them to feel fear. She wanted them to know that death was coming, and they could not stop it. The Malthine begged for mercy. They offered to surrender. They promised to do anything if humanity would spare them. Minji remembered a young human girl in the camps. The Malthine had hurt her for entertainment. The girl had begged for mercy too. They had laughed at her tears. Minji did not laugh. She simply gave the order to continue. The Malthine Empire fell in 3 months. Their worlds were not destroyed like the Voran homeworld. They were occupied. Every Malthine was found and killed. Their cities were left standing as monuments to what they had done and what had been done to them. Elder Songho-Ru was one of the last surviving original slaves. He was 140 years old. His body was weak, but his memory was perfect. He carried a list in his mind. Every species that had voted yes. Every species that had participated in the slave trade. Every species that had profited from human suffering. He sat in a council chamber on Earth and read the names aloud. The human leaders listened in silence. Each name was a death sentence. Each name was a civilization that would cease to exist. The Voran, extinct. The Desser Collective, extinct. The Malthine Empire, extinct. He continued reading. 9 more species on the council? 47 associate species. All of them guilty. All of them condemned. Some human leaders objected. A woman named Sira Wong stood and spoke against the killing. She was young. She had been born after the liberation. She did not carry the memories of slavery in her bones. "We have one," she said. "We have freed ourselves. We have destroyed those who hurt us most. But do we need to kill everyone? Do we need to become what they were?" The room was silent. Then Elder Sangho spoke. "When I was 7 years old, I watched aliens tear my mother from my arms. I never saw her again. When I was 12, I was beaten so badly that I lost the use of my left eye. When I was 20, my wife was taken to another world. I searched for her for 60 years. I found her grave on a frozen moon where she had been worked to death." He looked at Sira with his one good eye. "You ask if we need to kill everyone? I ask you, did they need to enslave us? Did they need to take our children? Did they need to destroy our world? They made a choice. Now we make ours." The vote was unanimous. The killing would continue, species by species, civilization by civilization. Humanity erased their oppressors from existence. Some were killed by the Genesis plague. Some were killed by weapons. Some were hunted down one by one. The galaxy that had once held thousands of intelligent species grew empty. Worlds that had been filled with life became silent tombs. The great civilizations that had existed for millions of years became footnotes in human history. Some aliens tried to flee. They ran to the edges of known space. They hid in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Human ships followed. Human soldiers found them. There was no escape. A few species that had not participated in the slave trade begged to be spared. They claimed they had been afraid of the council. They claimed they had treated their few human slaves well. They claimed they were different. Humanity reviewed their claims. In some cases, the claims were true. Those species were allowed to live. But they were watched. They were controlled. They would never threaten humanity again. Most claims were false. Most species had participated in human suffering in some way. They had bought human slaves. They had sold human technology stolen from Earth. They had turned away when humans begged for help. They died like all the others. Admiral Daeho Kim did not live to see the end. He died in his sleep one night, finally at peace. His last words were recorded for history. "We were slaves. Now we are free. We were weak. Now we are strong. We were scattered. Now we are one. Let the galaxy remember what happens to those who hurt humanity. Let them remember forever." The reckoning took 100 years. When it was over, humanity stood alone among the stars, the masters of an empty universe. 300 years had passed since the liberation. The galaxy was quiet. Where once 1,000 voices had called across the stars, now only one remained. Humanity spread across 10,000 worlds, filling the spaces left by the dead. Archivist Jiwoo Shin walked through the halls of the Great Memory. It was the largest building on Earth, a monument of black stone that rose 3 kilometers into the sky. Inside were the records of everything. Every human who had suffered under alien rule, every alien who had made them suffer, every death in the war that followed. Jiwoo was the keeper of these records. She knew the names of every species humanity had destroyed. She knew the numbers. 12 council species. 47 associate species. Trillions of lives. Millions of years of culture and history and knowledge, all gone. All reduced to data in her archives, she stopped before a display case. Inside was a small metal collar, the same kind of collar that had been placed on human slaves 300 years ago. The metal was dull now, scratched and worn, but it still worked. If you placed it on your neck, it would still burn when you moved too fast. Children came to the Great Memory on school trips. They looked at the collar with wide eyes. They could not imagine wearing such a thing. They could not imagine being owned. That was good, Giwu thought. That was why they had fought. So children would never know chains, but sometimes she wondered if they had paid too. High a price, President Minho Jung sat in his office in the new capital city. Through his window, he could see Earth's rebuilt oceans. Blue again, after centuries of work. Beautiful again, though nothing like the old photographs. A report lay on his desk. Scout ships had found something at the edge of known space. New species, young civilizations. People who had never heard of humanity or the Galactic Council or the Great Extinction. First contact was possible again. Minho thought about what to do. The last time humanity had met aliens, they had been enslaved. They had been scattered and broken and used like animals. They had responded by killing everyone responsible. What would they do this time? His advisors were divided. Some wanted to leave the new species alone. Let them develop on their own. Never make contact. The risk was too great. What if they became enemies? What if history repeated itself? Others wanted to make contact carefully. Establish trade. Share knowledge. Build relationships based on equality and respect. Humanity had learned hard lessons. Perhaps they could teach others. A third group said something darker. Strike first. Destroy the new species before they could become a threat. Never again allow aliens to have power over humanity. Never again be vulnerable. Minho listened to all of them. He made no decision. The choice was too important to make quickly. Captain Hayano flew her ship through the ruins of the Voran system. Where a beautiful planet had once orbited, only debris remained. Rocks and dust and frozen water. Nothing alive. Nothing at all. YEON was an explorer. She mapped the dead worlds. She recorded what remained of lost civilizations. She tried to understand who these species had been before humanity destroyed them. The Voran had been artists. Their cities had contained music halls and galleries and theaters. They had created sculptures so beautiful that humans had wept upon seeing them. They had written poetry that transcended language. They had also voted to enslave humanity. They had called humans animals. They had profited from human suffering for 50 years. Did that make them evil? Did that justify their extinction? Hyeon did not know. She only knew that the universe was quieter without them, emptier, lonelier. She flew on to the next dead world. There were so many to map. On a space station near the galactic core, young humans gathered to debate their future. They called themselves the New Path. They believed humanity had become the thing it hated: conquerors, destroyers, monsters. A woman named Soyoung Cho spoke to the crowd. She was a philosopher and a teacher. She had spent her life studying what humanity had done and what it might do next. "We won the war," she said. "We freed ourselves. We took revenge on our oppressors. These things were done, and they cannot be undone. But now we face a choice. Do we continue as we are? Do we rule the galaxy with fear and violence? Do we become what the council was? The crowd murmured. Some agreed, some did not. Or do we choose another way? Soyang continued. The council enslaved us because they saw us as lesser beings. They believed might made right. They believed that power justified cruelty. We proved them wrong by surviving. We proved them wrong by fighting back. But if we treat others the way they treated us, have we really proved anything at all? An old man stood up. His name was Dong Yun Park. He was the great-grandson of Dr. Yuna Park, who had created the weapons that made victory possible. He carried the weight of that legacy every day. My ancestor gave humanity the power to kill worlds, he said. She spent 50 years creating weapons of extinction. She did it because she believed there was no other way. She did it because she had seen what the aliens did to us. She died believing she had done the right thing. He paused. The room was silent. But before she died, she told my grandmother something. She said that power without wisdom is destruction. She said that revenge without limit is madness. She said that if humanity could not learn to be better than its enemies, then victory would be meaningless. The debate continued for hours. No conclusion was reached. Perhaps no conclusion was possible. In the depths of space, a human scout ship made contact with an alien vessel. The aliens were small and curious and afraid. They had never met another intelligent species before. They did not know what to expect. The human captain looked at the alien faces on his screen. He saw fear in their eyes. They had heard stories, whispers that had traveled across the stars, stories of a species that had emptied the galaxy, stories of the monsters called humanity. The captain thought about his orders. He thought about his training. He thought about the history he had learned and the choices his ancestors had made. Then he smiled. "Hello," he said. "We come in peace. We want to be friends." The aliens looked at each other. They did not trust the human. How could they? The stories were too terrible. The history was too dark. But the human kept smiling. He spoke softly. He moved slowly. He showed no weapons. He offered no threats. "I know what you have heard about us," he said. "Some of it is true. We have done terrible things. We have killed entire civilizations. We have emptied worlds. We carry that guilt forever." He leaned forward. His eyes were sad but honest. "But we were not always this way. Once, we were dreamers. We looked at the stars and saw hope. We wanted to meet other life. We wanted to share knowledge and culture and friendship. Then we were enslaved, and everything changed." The aliens listened. They did not run. They did not attack. They only listened. "We cannot change our past," the captain said. "We cannot bring back the species we destroyed. We cannot undo the pain we caused. But we can choose what we become. We can choose whether the story of humanity ends in blood or begins again in hope." He held out his hand, an old human gesture, a symbol of friendship. "I am offering you that choice. Work with us. Teach us. Help us become something better, or turn away and never see us again. The decision is yours." The aliens looked at the human hand. They looked at each other. They whispered in their own language. Then, slowly, one of them reached out. Their hand was different from the human. Hand smaller, smoother, but it fit well. It's enough first contact again. For the first time in 300 years this time, perhaps it would be different in the great memory on Earth. Archivist Ji Wuxian added a new entry to her records. A new species met. A new relationship begun. A new chapter in humanity's story. She did not know how this chapter would end. Nobody did. The future was unwritten. The choices were still to be made. But for the first time in a long time, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The stars were empty no longer. And humanity, for all its sins, still had the chance to fill them with something other than graves. Whether they would take that chance remained to be seen. But the possibility existed. And that was enough. For now.